Today's conspiracy theories, tomorrow's headlines. Most are still asleep and I ain't talking about no bedtime. The truth is not a Google search, you need to get your head right. The Greek goddess of illusion was called Media, and I'm not a coincidence theorist, I look for thread lines. Smashing every deadline, no longer smashing red wine. Though I can hear the bells chime, it feels like the end times. That probably should have been smashed on red wine, but the carnal mind is foolish. Obey and end up ghoulish. Don't get used by instinct, take control and learn to use it. Make a load of earnest music, earn a few quid, learn a few tricks. Sure, the truth is persecuted, this whole world is pure abusive. Know a bit about everything and everything about nothing. Figured out my noggin while you picture out shopping. You sit about watching while I dish it out, stop it. I don't mean to sound cocky, I'm not even proud of it. It's a second nature to me, just to be this out honest. I don't even need to sound honest, never been about profit. Everything but out on it, you can bet your house on it. Doubt I'll be out for the count when the sounds, and I'm down for the beat, no beat down. I mean, how long's it been? Help me out. I've been the only one who's held me down. All in the mind, hell freeze now. Still sick with it, healthy how? Few bars down and the world freaked out. I don't reach out, I seek out to speak out. I'ma recount the reasons they beat out.
I think about this a lot, and I've done a lot of reading about it over the years, and I don't think it's unfair to suggest that we have been held in an artificial, scarcity-driven, technological bubble in this country for a very long time. We're living in the past here by comparison to other places. And I think the only reason there's not more of an outcry and more people don't realize it is that the country is vast and a lot of people never leave it. So they don't go to other countries and see the truth.
Creative imagination began to give form and substance to the new art form called television.
Entertaining, illuminating, electrical window to the world.
That's my guess, if I had to guess. The New York subway system opened in 1904.
Certainly the most important means within the city is the subway. Almost any section of the city is within easy walking distance of a subway station. And by subway, one can travel to most points in the city, quicker and cheaper than by any other way.
And people think it's just historic looking, like that's just the aesthetic. But the New York subway system's basic technology and infrastructure is actually still just very old.
So here at the West 4th Street Tower, we have a 1930s interlocking machine and indication panel. While safe and reliable, it's an old one.
Some of it is pre-1930s, old.
Located inside the relay room for the West 4th Street interlocking. This interlocking plant is upwards of 80 years old. Reliability is certainly becoming more and more of an issue with the age. It's very hard to maintain. Located in front of me here, actual electromechanical relays that in many respects are the original equipment. Some of it has been refurbished and replaced. However, it is still 1930s and before technology. This equipment is not supported at all by the railroad industry.
When things break down, they have to fix them in-house because there's nowhere else to get those parts.
And this is most important. The cabling that provides this connectivity between the interlocking machine and the relays, as well as the equipment in the field on the actual tracks, is the original cabling as well.
They're not made anymore because they're so old.
A lot of this cable is cloth covered cable. So there's a lot of risks. If there was any small fire, there's a lot of risk of us losing this entire interlocking machine because it would be so hard to contain the fire.
There are parts of it that have never moved forward in time at all. By contrast, this is a high-speed train that's in the process of being built in Japan. And you gotta watch closely because it's gonna go by so fast you might actually miss it. This train uses something called maglev technology, which is a term derived from the phrase magnetic levitation. There are no wheels on that train. It uses magnets to levitate down the track. It goes at a top speed of 505 kilometers an hour or 314 miles per hour, much of it through tunnels. They will be able to get on that train and go from Tokyo to Osaka in just over an hour. When it's finished, when this train is finished, it will be the second such train in Japan. But it is going to be one of 8 operational maglev trains. And there's another one being built in China right now, so that would be 9. But China already has 4 of these trains. South Korea also has 2 of these trains. The first modern working model of maglev tech happened in the 1970s, although other experimental hover train systems were being worked on in France and the UK in the 1960s. Now, this is not to be confused with the monorail, just by the way, which most people think was first built here in Disneyland in the 1950s, but actually America had multiple monorail systems back in the Victorian era, including the double-decker Centennial monorail that was built for the first World's Fair in Philadelphia in 1876, Boynton's Bicycle Railroad, which was on Long Island, and the Meigs Experimental Elevated Railway that ran in East Cambridge, Massachusetts from 1886 to 1894, and then was subsequently destroyed in a fire that has been described as arson. The first patent for the monorail, however, dates all the way back to 1821, but I digress. But my point here is just, Asia's in the future with their transportation. And here we are in America, which is supposed to be one of the wealthiest nations on Earth, and our largest city is still using technology that's basically a century old in our subway systems.
What our riders don't realize, though, is that in our system, it's not just the architecture that's 100 years old. It's a lot of the basic technology as well. The infrastructure is old.
And somehow we're told it just always costs too much. Everything always costs too much. We can never upgrade anything because we don't have the money to.
Why then has high-speed rail, so common in other countries, not tracked in the U.S.?
We do have the money, by the way, for war at any given moment. And to send billions of dollars in aid to 179 countries, to almost the entire rest of the world. But we cannot upgrade our basic systems here, our basic infrastructure here, for some reason. There's always some reason that we here cannot have nice things. It's not ever really explained in a way that makes any kind of sense, especially not now in the 21st century, but here we are, and this is what's going on. Yeah, it is. This is that bridge. And by the way, this is really creepy. I feel like there's just some wire holding up this chicken crap that's like holding up some metal sheeting. It looks really, really big. I really don't want to. Yeah, you need to go that way. But our infrastructure is crumbling. It is in the past. Our country has been held in the past by comparison to other countries in this regard. The newest addition, by the way, to the New York subway system is the 2nd Avenue subway, which according to Reason magazine opened in 2017 and cost $4.45 billion just for the 2 miles from 63rd Street to 96th Street.
The full project? Yeah, that's expected to cost $16.8 billion or $2.6 billion per mile.
Which is a price tag that's between 8 and 12 times more expensive than it would have been if it had been built in Europe. The same exact thing. And it also makes that part of the subway officially the most expensive subway ever built at $2.6 billion a mile. Oh, and also it took almost a century to build it. They've been trying to build that for a century.
While first proposed in the 1920s, it didn't materialize until the early 2000s.
And it also was more than $500 million over budget by the time they were done.
But building infrastructure in the US, and in this case, subways, is very expensive. In fact, it is the 6th most expensive place to build rail transit in the world. And even that is likely an understatement.
It took a century to build that, and it was more than $500 million over budget when they finished it. But that is nothing, however, compared to the California high-speed rail project.
The very model of modern engineering, it hums across the fruited plains at a top speed of 200 miles an hour. It's revolutionized travel. It's a source of national pride in Morocco. Here in the U.S., high-speed rail looks like this.
Which was supposed to be operational by 2020 when it was initially proposed, but it was voted on in 2008.
An ambitious state-run project connecting LA and San Francisco has lurched, derailed, cost billions, and may never happen.
But after years of accusations of everything from systematic management failures to flawed decision-making to outright claims of sweetheart deals and corruption, billions of dollars have been spent, and they don't even know when this project is going to be finished. The total initial cost was supposed to be $33 billion, but that figure has reportedly ballooned now to $127 billion. And the first segment of track is slated to be $206 million a mile. And that's if there aren't any more overruns. And according to the California Policy Center, the financing alone, based on preposterously optimistic ridership projections for this segment of 6.6 million riders per year, and a 30-year term at 5% annual interest, would work out to the cost of $348 per ticket, which I can tell you right now in this economy means they're not going to get anywhere near 6 million riders. That's just not a thing at all. Not exactly an easily affordable means of travel. The project's a disaster. That is what is pretty much the consensus on it, and it's likely to be a drain on Californians because the ticket revenue will not even cover the operating costs, let alone the staggering sums that are now projected to cover actually constructing it. And there's a 300-plus page Federal Railroad Administration report, which I'm going to fully admit to you I did not entirely read through because that is a massive thing, but I did skim through the first few pages because they're giving a notice of intent to terminate 2 federal funding agreements for $4 billion, and they're citing a pattern of broken promises, perpetuating the same inefficient project management activities with minimal progress to advance the actual construction of this high-speed rail. And that just came out last year. All of this while the rest of California is literally falling apart. As the Hoover Institution pointed out in 2018, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave California a D- on its energy infrastructure due to age and chronic extreme fire risk. A D+ for stormwater with drainage systems that have not been updated much since the 1940s. A D on levees, which could cost $45 billion to bring up to date. And a D on their roads, which have been ranked 49th worst in the country and would need $130 billion in investment to fix. And a C for their drinking water. And there's 1 million Californians that are without consistent clean drinking water. So the problem with spending money on rational, practical solutions that lower the cost of living and improve the quality of life for millions of Californians is that this goal is inconvenient for the special interests that run California, the California Policy Center concluded. And that right there is a running theme in this country, as it has been for well over a century. And they go on to make the point, the true motivation behind all of these useless mega projects that never seem to come to fruition and are mired in corruption, and the money just seems to vanish without anything actually being done, is really a desire to neglect California's essential water, power, and transportation infrastructure, because by creating artificial scarcity and engineering higher prices for all of these resources, the public utilities and private energy producers can reap larger profits. And it plays out across all of these economic sectors. And so really they're just keeping people in this trap and squeezing them more and more and more for basic essential things they need to exist in California, while they give basically a little more than lip service to these mega projects that probably won't really help the average person very much. And that's what it's like everywhere. It's not like California is alone in this. This is how our country is. I have been in a car and road tripped extensively throughout this country. It is like this everywhere. This country's falling apart. It has been for a very, very long time.
The pothole problem creating a traffic nightmare on the 71 freeway at Holt Avenue in Pomona Wednesday after numerous large potholes opened up, stranding dozens of drivers.
The ride through this West Omaha neighborhood is anything but smooth.
Both work as couriers for the city of Compton, and they had driven over so many potholes, it was beginning to cost them their living. So the De La Rosas decided to act. They're now driving from pothole to pothole across the city.
I looked at on the bucket, there was like a picture of you flattening it, so I'm like, seems easy enough. City ain't coming, so we gotta do this. All up to us.
Just setting up this shot, we saw another car lose a tire to this pothole. We're told it's not a new problem. Some drivers know to avoid it. So why hasn't this been fixed yet?
Groups like the World Economic Forum and the C40 cities and things like that, some of which our mayors in cities here are on those groups and go to the WEF. And somehow there's a disconnect between them talking about we're going to have 15-minute cities and, nobody needs to own a car. We're not going to have car ownership when we here in America live in a car-centered country.
In this motion picture, we will use a term popular in the West. This is a freeway. Only for cars, trucks, buses, and motorcycles.
This is a car-centric country. You cannot live in many places in this country if you do not own a car.
The multi-million-dollar freeway systems help you travel rapidly and safely, usually.
It's not actually possible. The overwhelming majority of cities in this country do not have even the most basic of mass transportation systems.
Wheels are rolling in all directions, and they're all headed for the biggest traffic jam since the wheel was invented.
Period. We do not have a train system that functions in the way that train systems function in Europe at all. We do not have bus systems in most of these cities.
We can have our superhighways in the sky, fabulous, futuristic forms, like this Hollywood freeway interchange, which sorts flowing traffic 8 ways at once.
I live in a town of over 25,000 people. We don't even have a basic taxi service here. I think there's one person that runs a business out of their house or something, and they stopped doing it at 4:30 on a Sunday. There's not anything here. If my car broke down, I would be riding a bike several miles to go get groceries. And that's just how it would be. But some of these people live in places that if they didn't have a car, that would basically be a death sentence because there would be no access to food. There would be no access to healthcare. There would be nothing. So trying to act like you can put stipulations on America that are the same stipulations that you can have in Europe where they have a totally different infrastructure situation and a totally different mass transportation system is just ridiculous. And it didn't have to be this way. Let's go back to the old 1904 New York subway system. What if I told you that they actually had a different system, a pneumatic tube system, a working system, 30 years earlier that was never allowed to fully get off the ground, that transported hundreds of thousands of people, and they just didn't allow it to exist. And it wasn't just some half-cocked scheme either. This came from Alfred Eli Beach, who was the owner and editor of the Scientific American. He had lots of patents. And in 1868, he proposed building a novel transit system using large fans to create differential air pressure that would push and pull tube-shaped passenger cars through tunnels dug under Manhattan. So he leased a space beneath Devlin's clothing store on the southwest corner of Broadway and Warren Street and began digging in 1869. And there are debates about how much secrecy surrounded this digging. Some say it was done in total secrecy, although I don't know how you could be digging that close to City Hall without anyone knowing. But supposedly he had to put up all his own money for it and do it all himself because he knew that the entrenched political powers in the city had financial interests in the elevated trains that were already going on. So they were not about to let him come in and have his new idea that might compete with their idea. And this wasn't even a totally unique idea to him. London's Crystal Palace had an atmospheric railway for several months that they demoed in 1864, which was also a pneumatic design. Beech's tunnel was completed in 1870, and he called it the Beech Pneumatic Transit. It had a 300-foot demonstration tunnel, which had a lavish waiting room, described as illuminated by zirconia lamps and featuring ornate chandeliers, a grand piano, and a fountain with goldfish swimming in it. Sounds really cool. The cars could seat up to 22 people. There was a massive steam-powered fan nicknamed the Western Tornado that would blow and suck air to propel this tube car at 10 miles an hour down this track. And that was it, a tube, a car, and a fan. That's how it worked. And considering how nasty and congested the streets were with horse-drawn carriage dookie at this time, people were pretty enthusiastic to try any alternative travel options. Beech's tube system was so popular that 400,000 people rode on it in a single year. But as the story goes, political opposition in the form of Boss Tweed, who was invested in elevated trains, and other wealthy, politically connected people, including Alexander Turney Stewart and John Jacob Astor III, refused to support the project, and bills for the system kept getting vetoed. They would get passed up and then get vetoed to get this system put into place, even though there was a lot of public support for it. When they finally got a bill passed that would support it, if Beech could get the funding, it happened to be in 1873, and then the financial panic of 1873, curiously driven largely by speculation in the railroads, just by the way of all things, ended Beech's pneumatic tube project for good. Beech couldn't get it funded, the tunnel was bricked up, and this is the only photograph of the tube that I could find before it disappeared behind that sealed door for decades. Until a fire in December of 1898 burned the store down to its substructure, and they found the door and they reopened it to see the tube still sitting on the tracks. And they snapped this picture of Beech's grandson sitting in the car, and it's just a really ghostly picture. Then they shuttered it up again, and it wasn't seen again until 1912 when they reopened it and repurposed the tunnel for the actual New York subway system. And supposedly a plaque was going to be put up in the City Hall station commemorating Beech for actually putting in the first system there, but no one's ever been able to find this mythical plaque. But if Beech's pneumatic tube tunnel looks a little bit familiar to you, it might be because you've seen the movie Ghostbusters too. And I didn't know this, and I thought this was so cool when I saw this. The part where they break through the subway and they come through to the part that has the pink goop, they left a little sign there at the top.
Pneumatic transit. I can't believe it's the only pneumatic transit system. It's still here.
Just a little Easter egg to Beech's lost and forgotten and ignored pneumatic transit system. Cool, huh? I mean, it's kind of the perfect metaphor. The angry, psychoreactive, ectoplasmic river of pink goo.
You know how much negative energy it must have taken to generate a flow this size?
Collected, buried under the surface in a long forgotten tunnel. In a country where history just keeps getting buried and forgotten again and again and again on a loop. According to Michael Lucibella on Advancing Physics, the U.S. government considered the possibility in the 1960s of running a vacuum train, combining pneumatic tubes with maglev technology between Philadelphia and New York City, but the project was deemed prohibitively expensive and it got scrapped, which happens again and again and again and again. An engineer with Lockheed Martin named L.K. Edwards also proposed a Bay Area gravity vacuum transit system for California in 1967, which was supposed to run in tandem with San Francisco's BART system, then under construction, but it too never got built. Nor was the underground very high-speed transportation system conceived by Robert Salter of RAND in the 1970s that was supposed to run along what we now call the Northeast Corridor. These types of systems keep cropping up like, why don't we do this? And somehow never happens. It just never happens. But it's a technology that they not only had, they built it and it worked. And it was already here in the Victorian era. And Beech wanted to extend that out. And he could not get past the entrenched political and economic forces to get anything accomplished with it.
It was that wonderful day not so long ago when the automobile first came to an American town. The grown-ups clustered around to gape and gawk at this elaborate, extravagant, outlandish method of locomotion.
And I didn't even realize until I started looking into this how old the concept of an electric car actually is. When cars were first a thing, there were more electric cars than any other kind. In 1899 and 1900, more electric cars were sold than any other type of car. And by 1903, London had more electric cars on the road than internal combustion vehicles. The first electric carriage was actually designed in the 1830s by a Scottish inventor called Robert Anderson. And it utilized galvanic cells, but they couldn't be recharged because they hadn't come up with that technology. It would be another few decades before rechargeable batteries were invented. Not very efficient at first, but it was something. It worked. And then you had a British inventor called Thomas Parker who built the first EV using lead-acid batteries and dynamos in 1884. A few years later, William Morrison applied for a patent on what is likely the first American electric car in 1890. So all through the 1800s, you had this kind of technology being worked upon. Thomas Edison teamed up with Bailey Electrics on a car that could go up to 100 miles on a full charge in 1910. But that company went out of business in 1915. And Edison had been working on an improved electric vehicle battery starting in 1900, and he spent a whole decade on it, refining an alkaline battery made of nickel and iron in just the right configuration to generate steady electric current, courtesy of galvanism. And there's all these stories about how, well, these cars started disappearing in the 1910s because they just couldn't compete with the cheaper gas-fueled vehicles like Henry Ford's Model T. But I also found an article in the New Jersey Education Association website that quoted the director and general editor of the Thomas A. Edison Papers Project at Rutgers University as claiming that it was World War I that did away with the electric car because there was a lack of charging stations under wartime conditions. It just made electrics the wrong way to go, he said. So it was the Great War that put the final nail in the coffin of electric automobiles at that time, and they just never fully recovered after World War I. I mean, Model Ts were like 4 times cheaper at the time.
No longer a luxury, almost everyone can afford to own a car. And sometimes it seems that we're all on the road at the same time.
But Henry Ford himself also made a hemp car in 1941 that maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, which was 30% lighter than steel and significantly more durable. I've seen it said that it was 10 times more durable. And it was designed to be run on ethanol made from hemp and other agricultural waste. But then this car got abandoned due to World War II. Hemp had also just been outlawed in 1937, but Ford was going to grow it anyway. He did not care. Supposedly the outlaw was because of THC, but if you really start looking into that claim, what you're going to once again find is powerful lobbies, including the oil lobby, the paper lobby, and plastics industries, including companies like DuPont, that did not want that to be available to people.
Hemp for victory.
I'm sure that when word came out about this car that he was working on, the oil industry was right there, and they're always right there.
Well, you know what makes your auto run. For millions of years, this source of power slept peacefully in the dark recesses of the earth until modern magic loosed the liquid energy from its subterranean prison.
Now, we could go on a side quest here about how the majority of fuels that were being used in this country pre-Civil War by farmers were alcohol-based fuels that could be distilled on the farms at very low cost until a tax got passed on alcohol during the Civil War. And then right after that, you have Rockefeller coming along, buying up all of the refineries. And by the 1880s, they own like 90% of that market in this country. And the tax is still going on the alcohols because the alcohol taxes implemented during the Civil War were never repealed. Even to this day, they became a permanent fixture of federal revenue. In the early 1900s, you have Henry Ford talking about ethanol and how we're going to have this alcohol-based fuels. It's going to change everything. And then you have Rockefeller and his son with their petroleum-based apparatus of millions of dollars pushing the hell out of prohibition laws. And if you ask about, is there a little bit of a conflict of interest there and the reasons why the Rockefellers might have gone to such great lengths to push that, you will immediately be told that you're a conspiracy theorist, and their entire interest in pushing for prohibition laws, which completely derailed alcohol-based fuels as an alternative at that time to petroleum, this was really about their religious and moral motivations, okay? They were just very devout and very religious, and this was a moral issue for them, and that's why it was so important. It had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that they completely cornered the petroleum industry. They were raking in millions of dollars off of that, and they were using those millions of dollars to transform and socially engineer our healthcare system and our education system in this country to completely control everything.
Where is the industry that isn't dependent upon sales? Where is the industry that doesn't want to maintain the position it's reached?
That is a conspiracy theory. And if you even think that way, then you need to go get a tinfoil hat and put it on top of your tinfoil hat, okay? And the anti-ethanol myth is generally rejected by historians because gasoline was already dominant and a cheaper choice. So there was no threat there, even though nothing can ever unseat something if it's already dominant, if it never even has a chance to get off the ground. But whatever.
That battery brand looks so fake. All right. This is a 1.5 volt AA battery. We're just going to test it. So we're getting about 1.54. Well, this is the simplest thing I found that you can do to show that everything can be used to make energy. You just take a basic lemon and an old penny and a galvanized nail. And just stick it in the lemon. And the nail is your negative end, and the penny is your positive end. Let's see what we get. .91. So you get almost a volt. If I can hold this steady. There we go. Almost a volt out of a lemon.
Then you have more exotic, interesting things that you hear about once and you just never hear about them almost ever again. In August 1921, articles popped up all over the country talking about J.E. Ammon's atmospheric car that pulled electricity from the air. And I just want to read you a few excerpts from this. I found a bunch of blurbs about it, and I've talked about this before in other videos, but I actually found this article that goes way more into detail about this, and it's pretty fascinating stuff. It says that the atmospheric generator draws electricity from the air and will revolutionize the field of motive power. And it's made by the Ammon brothers, J.E. and C.E. Ammon of Denver. And they successfully demonstrated this machine, propelling an automobile through downtown streets and attaining speeds of 25 to 35 miles per hour. The automobile used was an old electric car, which the batteries had been removed, and the generator invention substituted. We'd like to open up the drum for inspection, Ammon said, but we consider that would not be wise until we've gone to Washington and obtained our patents. We expect to go there next week. The tests today were entirely successful. And he was asked if it contained any batteries of any kind, and he asserted it certainly did not. If it did, we surely would not have the temerity to call it what we do. We think our invention will revolutionize motor power entirely. It talks about how the superintendent of Detroit Electric and Battery Company was skeptical, like other electricians, before he saw the test, but declared becoming enthusiastic over the invention and believes it's destined to make great changes in the power principles. The batteries that were in the car originally weighed 900 pounds, but this invention only weighs 250. And so there's no possibility that the drum enclosing the atmospheric generator could contain batteries equal to the ordinary storage because of the size and weight. Even if a smaller battery were just concealed in this thing, they say, the invention would still be marvelous, because at the time, the batteries that were in these cars were hundreds and hundreds of pounds. The storage batteries in our own latest model car weigh 1,300 pounds. It says, today the ordinary electric car will run on about 100 miles without charging. Even if they have an invention which will make it 150, it's still amazing. All electrical manufacturers would want it. And it talks about how the Ammons declare that this invention can be utilized for heating buildings, operating ships, airplanes, and power plants, and other mechanisms now driven by steam, gasoline, and electricity. And they've been working on it for several years. So you hear about the Ammons, you hear about that, and then you don't hear about anything about that ever again. The only thing I could find on J.E. Ammon after that is an article that came out in 1939 talking about how he was in a car crash in the fog and died, and that he was killed instantly when his car collided with an oil truck in the heavy fog. I mean, what are the odds of that? He's been working on an invention that's supposed to unseat oil, and he's killed by an oil truck. And they don't say anything else there. There's nothing about his inventions or anything else. The guy's just gone. But it's not the last time you hear about atmospheric generators, because just a few years later, another such project out of Denver was widely reported across the country in 1927, this time to power an airplane. And once again, it's an air generator that's going to change the industry. It's an atmospheric generator whereby electric power is taken from the atmosphere and converted into high voltage. And if you read through these articles, they were doing successful demonstrations in front of Westinghouse employees who did not understand how it worked. And that although it was alternating, the current would operate as a direct current, resulting, according to the engineers, from the fact that the alternating waves are of such a frequency that the current approximates a different current. The secret of the generator is said to lie in the method of winding a coil of copper current-producing coil around a core of metal. And while the engineers hesitated on commenting on the invention, they admitted readily that the claim borne out by the preliminary test proved true, and that the power industry would be revolutionized, and that it wasn't earth magnetism or anything like that. And they could place the apparatus in a steel safe and it continued functioning, and that it was regenerative. And they could use it to power lights. They were talking about using this for a lot of things. So you hear about that they're going to have this atmospheric generator just a few years later after the Ammon car. And once again, you don't hear about it anymore. It's just gone. And in the Ammon car stories, they say they're going to Washington to get patents. But if you go to the U.S. patent website and you do a search for the phrase atmospheric generator or atmospheric energy, you will come back with nothing. The only thing I could find was one search return for atmospheric generator, and it was from 2023, and it had to do with atmospheric water generation, which is also something that has been around for a while, and that one truly does work, and yet for some reason it's just not being used, inexplicably. See, we're told all the time about droughts and how bad everything is with that, but we're not employing this technology that totally has worked. They have billboards, they've used them. We fully know that one works. We're not using it for some reason. Just really inexplicable. And if atmospheric energy generation sounds crazy, recall that this was Nikola Tesla's claim as well when he was making the Wardenclyffe Tower, which he built in 1901 and is seen here in 1904. And most people who know about Tesla, which is also interesting, there's a whole note there about how after he died, he kind of disappeared from history books for a very long time. They know the story about how J.P. Morgan refused to fund his project because they couldn't put a meter on it. Free, abundant wireless energy was definitely not something that he could find a way to monetize and charge people for and squeeze them for. So the project was abandoned in 1906 and the tower dismantled for scrap in 1917. See, there's big bars right here, guys. Sorry, but do you see that red bench right there? Orient yourself to that. Now look directly behind it at that kind of octagonal cement shape that's around in a circle behind this statue. Can you see that outline there?
That's where the original tower stood. And I believe it was pulled down and scrapped in 1917 to pay off his debt on the place after, JP Morgan pulled the funding and all that. But it used to stand right there. So cool. But the concept of how this type of energy would work was again revisited in modern times on a PBS special called Master of Lightning, which first aired in December 2000, discussing the HARP array in Alaska.
HARP project evolved from a patent filed in 1987, in which Tesla's work is referenced. It proposed using the ionosphere like an enormous electrical circuit to transmit power around the planet. It even described a means of changing the weather by superheating portions of the upper atmosphere with microwave energy. Ionospheric modification is still in its early experimental stages, but microwave technology has already made it possible to transmit wireless power with the use of satellites.
All right, let's go into Alaska, create microwaves from the natural gas, send them to a satellite at a particular geosynchronous orbit, put a reflector there, and send it to Japan. And in Japan now, you get the antenna, which transforms these microwaves into 60 hertz, and you get electricity. So you make essentially Tesla's dream.
And we know there are modern experiments ongoing with this technology today, as with the Milford Tower, which we've reported on this channel in the past.
Believe it or not, the theory behind this tower goes back more than 100 years to a scientist named Nikola Tesla. Had a theory about sending electricity through the air. Now the technology exists to make that possible. But first, Visiv Technologies has other experiments.
I just wanted to add this because I found it and I thought I knew this story. I've read so much about Tesla over the years, but I'd always heard that the Wardenclyffe Tower was destroyed after falling into foreclosure because JP Morgan wouldn't fund Tesla's work. He refused to fund something he couldn't put a meter on. And while that's still true, it's also apparently true that the government ordered this tower to be blown up with dynamite in 1917 during World War I, with claims that German spies were using it to commit espionage. It says here that suspecting that German spies were using the big wireless tower erected at Shoreham, Long Island about 18 years ago by Nikola Tesla, the federal government ordered the tower destroyed and it was blown up this week with dynamite. During the past month, several strangers had been seen lurking about the place. Tesla erected the tower, which was about 100 feet high with a well about 100 feet deep, for use in experimenting with the transmission of electrical energy for power and lighting purposes by wireless. The equipment cost nearly $200,000. Tesla used the plant for a few years without much success and abandoned it. Several years ago, the property was sold under foreclosure. So here's a question I have for everyone. If it didn't work, why would the government go out of its way to destroy it with dynamite? If this thing doesn't work, what are they worried about? How are German spies using a tower that doesn't work? That's a lot of trouble to go to blow something up that supposedly doesn't work at all. Did the German spies figure out how to make free wireless energy for the whole world? They didn't want that to happen either? I don't know. But why blow something up if it doesn't work? Yeah. But I digress. I came across more electric cars. Just all throughout the 20th century, there are electric cars that keep trying to crop up and they keep just disappearing. And the excuses for that don't really make sense, including this really cool looking prototype I found out of Britain for an electric self-driving car.
Powered by electric batteries, you can drive it on ordinary roads at a comfortable speed for local journeys.
Which utilized an electrified rail that they had plans to lay the guideways along existing roads.
For longer journeys or for travel through congested areas, you leave the road and enter a special guideway. The undercarriage slides under the track and the star car begins to glide along an electrified rail. You press a destination button on a dashboard route map and electronic controls take over. You travel automatically and safely at 60 miles an hour, taking your ease as you go. The guideway is only 8 feet wide and could be laid alongside existing roads easily and cheaply. You may be slotted into a train of star cars going the same way, but at your destination you'll be routed onto an exit spur. There, you either leave the vehicle in a station car park, or you can resume control and drive to your final destination before parking it.
But they have this, and you see it, and then you don't see it again. And it's not just cars. Do you remember the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit? I loved that movie when I was a kid, even though that judge guy was scary as hell. But the Pacific Electric Railway Company, nicknamed Red Cars, operated all over LA from 1901 to 1961. But these kind of trolley cars were actually first in that town in 1887. By the 1920s, the LA Red Car was the largest electric railway system in the world.
Hey, mister, ain't you got a car? Who needs a car in LA? We got the best public transportation system in the world.
It was relied upon by working class Los Angelinos to get around. People said you could ride downtown for a quarter and have hardly any traffic. You had to ask yourself, how did LA go from this to the smog-filled...
LA is once again the smoggiest city in the U.S. This is according to the American Lung Association.
Gridlock that we hear about all the time today.
Jeff and Pat, makes you want to not just drive, right? I mean, take a look at that. That is just a giant parking lot.
America once had a very extensive streetcar system that grew in the latter half of the 1800s. By 1920, the streetcar or trolley was the primary mode of urban transport for cities that had a population over 20,000 people. The nation had tens of thousands of miles of track. And today there are over 450 U.S. urbanized areas that have over 50,000 people in them. But only 15 cities are considered to have extensive, modern, fully active rail networks going. And then when you try to look up concrete figures about questions that I feel like should be simple, like how many light rails are there? Or how many cities have a light rail? You'll come back with 26, or another website will say it's 30 to 40. A lot of times you get a range. And some of those cities overlap in the figure because they have multiple lines going, and so they count them as multiple in the total. And then there's a semantics about what is even considered a light rail. And so by the time you get done just trying to look up that simple question, you don't end up with a concrete answer. But regardless, the majority of that transit is clustered in the northeastern corridor of the country. And then you have like Chicago, Illinois, and a few other places on the West Coast. But the majority of the center of the country is just a whole lot of nothing if you don't have a car. You're going to have a car. If you live anywhere in the middle, pretty much of the country other than Chicago, you need a car because you're not getting around in almost any other way. I've mentioned before how the bus system in Austin, Texas has over 1 million people. The bus system there is a mess. Just trying to take it to get from the south side to the north side will take you forever. It is not a workable system if that was something you had to do. And that's a city with 1 million people in it. If they can't get bus systems to work in a city with 1 million people, you can believe that if you live in a town like 25,000 people, you're not going to even have anything. There's just nothing. 15 cities considered to have extensive, modern, fully active rail networks. By comparison, there were 19 streetcar systems running just in Alabama alone in the late 1800s, early 1900s, just in Alabama. All of the states had them. Every state had multiple systems running, and people could get around without having to own a car. And somewhere between corporate monopolies and government policies, the majority of our electric streetcar systems in this country were completely decommissioned between 1950 and 1970, although many of them started going bankrupt in the lead up to the Great Depression when people started switching over to cars more. Then I found out there's a lot of abandoned subway tunnels underneath a lot of our cities. And the largest of those sits below Cincinnati, Ohio, which has over 2 miles of subway tunnels that are just abandoned and empty in the darkness underneath the city, where a subway was supposed to run in the 1920s before the Great Depression ended the project. And urban explorers have gone in and documented, they walked the whole tunnel system. The sides of the walls now look like caves in there, in places where the water has continuously dripped in for a century. Mass transportation in this country is such a mess. other countries write articles consoling themselves that at least they aren't us in this regard. Like I found this article from last year from the Australian Broadcasting Company. It's a headline asking why our public transport is just so bad. And then they interviewed a historian, Jake Berman, who wrote a book called The Lost Subways of North America, who says that we have not only a legacy of decades of disinvestment from public transportation, but, quote, a really unique situation where North America bulldozed its cities to rebuild them around the car. That's not something that happened anywhere else in the world, he said. And now here we are, and according to the nonprofit Transportation for America, an analysis they released back in January of this year, a $4.6 trillion investment across all levels of government over 20 years would be required to build, operate, and maintain a transit network that approaches the level of service within a cohort of 17 global cities with world-class transit systems in this world. And while $4.6 trillion is a pretty eye-watering figure, it's still way less than the $6.3 trillion that the U.S. is expected to spend on maintaining our crumbling highways over that same period of time.
Here it is, the obligatory traffic jam in Waco on I-35, as it has been ever since I moved here in 2012. Whatever they're working on here, they will never finish it, ever. Look, this is a regular freaking ass highway. Like, there's nothing special about this highway. It doesn't chirp music when you drive on it. Caution, there's road work. You don't even need to put a sign. You've been having the same freaking road work for 15 years. You need to put a sign when there's not road work anymore, because people will be so shocked that the road work is actually finished on whatever is going on with this magical stretch of highway that they will actually be like, what the hell? They'll probably stop and get their picture taken with it. It'll be like a roadside attraction in the Waco. What are they even doing? Are they building a deep underground secret alien base under the Waco? Because honestly, there's no reason for how stupid this is every freaking time. This is like this every single time. Every single time.
So they're going to spend $6.3 trillion on the crumbling roads. And we still don't have widely available mass public transportation in the majority of cities here. We just don't. In a country that's really forced everyone into car ownership or having access to a car in one way or another, that is increasingly pricing people out of car ownership altogether, and we will get to that momentarily. Well, I bet it wouldn't surprise you to hear that there's actually something called the General Motors streetcar conspiracy.
Laid off. A new outfit bought the red car. Some big company called Cloverleaf. Kidding. They bought the red car? Yeah, put the poor guy on 2 weeks' notice. Cutbacks, they said.
Which lays out how GM, along with Standard Oil, Phillips, and Firestone Tire, waged a war on the electric traction of these electric railway systems. GM was buying up and systematically dismantling electric streetcar systems all across the country and driving them into extinction. And it's not a theory. A Chicago federal jury convicted GM of conspiring with companies to replace electric systems with buses and monopolize the sale of bus parts and buses, for which they had to pay a whopping $5,000, reported at the time as a slap on the wrist. And the company's treasurer was convicted for the key role in the monopoly, for which he was fined $1 whole. So I'm sure he'll never do that again, because that is $1. Whew. That is steep, right? According to a 1974 article in the Ledger, despite this criminal conviction, GM continued to acquire and convert electric transit systems through 1955, and by then, 88% of the nation's electric streetcar network had been eliminated. 88%.
They're calling it a freeway. What the hell's a freeway?
This is a freeway.
8 lanes of shimmering cement running from here to Pasadena. Smooth, safe, fast. Traffic jams will be a thing of the past.
It's called Los Angeles, the city of the angels. This sprawling metropolis, biggest traffic jam since the wheel was invented.
I see a place where people get on and off the freeway. On and off and on, all day, all night.
New earthbound angels keep pouring in by the thousands every year.
Soon, where Toontown once stood will be a string of gas stations, inexpensive motels, restaurants that serve rapidly prepared food.
But what if your whole world looks like this? How can you not feel disconnected and lonely? Come on.
Tire salons, automobile dealerships.
Ever wonder why you can't walk outside and clear your head? Quick reminder, this is what we've done in the past 50 years to our environment. Thank you and goodbye.
And wonderful, wonderful billboards reaching as far as the eye can see.
And today, this is how the American road looks. The whole nation has become swift and mobile, flowing along over a great network of highways, more than 3 million miles long and constantly growing.
No, it's like every major city in this country. Traffic jam.
My God. It'll be beautiful.
So we had a functioning bunch of mass transit systems in the country already, and they were systematically dismantled because car companies wanted to corner the transportation market. According to the DOJ, General Motors handled 85% of America's inner-city and transit bus systems by 1965. And a paper presented at the Senate Judiciary Committee's Subcommittee on Antitrust and Monopoly in 1974 titled American Ground Transport, a proposal for restructuring the automobile, truck, bus, and rail industries by attorney Bradford Snell, described as a study of the social consequences of monopoly, which showed that excessive economic concentration could restructure a society for corporate ends, noted, quote, "This is not a study of malevolent or rapacious executives. Rather, it maintains that as a result of their monopolistic structure, the big three automakers have acted in a manner detrimental to the public interest."
But millions of cars take up a lot of room, especially when too many of them are in the same place at the same time.
More specifically, it demonstrates General Motors to be a sovereign economic state whose common control of auto, truck, bus, and locomotive production was a major factor in the displacement of rail and bus transportation by cars and trucks.
Take this modern office building. If all the people in the building drove their cars to work, the parking area required would be greater than the floor space of the building itself.
It notes, moreover, that these displaced methods of travel were energy-conserving, dependable, economical, safe, and environmentally compatible.
Well, it's public transit in action, a logical solution to traffic congestion.
In sum, this study strongly suggests that a monopoly in ground vehicle production has led inexorably to a breakdown in this nation's ground transportation. We are witnessing today the collapse of a society based on the automobile. Snell wrote, "Whether General Motors executives actually intended to construct a society wholly dependent on motor vehicles is unlikely, and in any case irrelevant. That such a society developed in part as a result of that firm's control of competing forms of ground transportation is both relevant and apparent."
This is really living.
And if you point that out and you go look stuff up about that, you will right away be informed that it's not fair to really place the blame on the monopolies, on the corporations. There were other factors. But the point is, whether or not it was the corporate monopolies or the decisions by government to favor those monopolies over other modes of transportation is really not the point. We're now overwhelmingly reliant on cars here for travel. And now they're talking about spending trillions of dollars in this country to rebuild systems that we already had like a century ago. It was perfectly functional, that already worked. It was already a thing. And now they're going to do that all again. We're just going to loop and do it all again.
The great automobile factories and the grounds encircling them are never empty. Like mighty reservoirs, they feed the streams of cars along the highway.
Load and unload, buddy. That's what to do, like a bunch of sheep.
With 54 million vehicles on our streets and roads today, 50% more than before the war, by 1975, they say we will be driving 85 million.
We must limit our driving now to what is absolutely necessary. We must end our love affair with the big car and use buses and commuter trains.
Passengers with Metroliner tickets may board the Metroliner.
So great is our demand that we're looking for new energy in places once considered sacrosanct. Drilling for natural gas is taking place in George Washington National Forest in Virginia.
It's not like General Motors have stopped doing shady things. In 1996, after the California Air Resources Board enacted a mandate on zero emissions cars because they wanted to start making some percentage of the cars have zero emissions, GM produced the EV1, which was an electric car. There's a documentary you can watch called Who Killed the Electric Car on this. And after watching about 15 to 20 minutes of it, it was pretty clear to me that the first answer I'd give on who killed the electric car was GM themselves. They didn't even really try to sell this car. They made it, but they didn't even really try to sell it. And that's their whole thing, is selling cars. That's all they do. So they know how to do that. And they did everything the way exactly how you would do it if you weren't actually trying to sell this car.
How do you feel about this fine old mobile?
It's easy to see myself taking the wheel. Ooh, what a dreamy ride.
What you end up with, and I can't play it for copyright reasons, is an ad that doesn't really show the car at all. It doesn't show anybody driving the car. It doesn't tell you how much the car costs. It doesn't tell you anything about the car. It basically shows what looks like shadows of people on the ground that have been likened to the ashes of nuclear Holocaust victims. And it plays a really weird voiceover that doesn't really tell you anything. I mean, basically, it's an anti-car commercial. They refused to let anyone buy one, so you could only lease the EV1, you couldn't purchase it. Then after a few years, they began pushing much more expensive and less efficient, less developed hydrogen fuel cell technology that would probably take decades to actually be a feasible alternative to anything.
Tonight, I'm proposing $1.2 billion in research funding so that America can lead the world in developing clean, hydrogen-powered automobiles.
So they produced 1,117 EV1 electric cars, and then despite widespread opposition from the drivers of these cars, including mass protests that involved famous people attending a mock funeral for the car, GM went about retrieving every single one of these cars back from the people who owned them and sent them off to crushing facilities, turning perfectly good working cars that required very little maintenance into piles of worthless junk. That is except for the few of them that they donated to museums and educational institutions with their powertrains disabled to absolutely prevent any operation of the vehicle. I think what they wanted to do was make a car and then have it fail to be like, see, there's just no interest. There's no feasible alternative to what we already make.
To help us get a glimpse into the future of this unfinished world of ours, there has been created for the New York World's Fair a thought-provoking exhibit of the developments ahead of us, the greater and better world of tomorrow that we in America are building today.
Too bad. That was my take on it, like 15 minutes in. So, but it wasn't just them. It was like a conflagration of all of these different competing interests that none of them wanted people to have such a car.
Who controls the future? Whoever has the biggest club. It's in more ways than one. One they can bash you in and one they can belong to.
I know you're all worried. Solar power plant. Photovoltaic cells. Lasts 10 times as long as a conventional light bulb. Insulate as well as 10 sheets of glass. I'm not worried about any of these things because no one's ever going to know about them.
And that's before you get into even more conspiratorial claims from like the guy who claimed he made a water car and then died suddenly and said he was poisoned because of it. Stuff like that.
It's a major breakthrough that will no doubt make motorists happy. And as Ralph Robinson explains, the Pentagon is also showing lots of interest in this project.
This guy, Stanley Meyer, made a water fuel cell powered car. He's got extensive U.S. patents here on these kinds of things.
Stanley Meyer says the answer to dependence on foreign oil lies all around us, in seawater, tap water, and rainwater. Any kind of H2O, he says, can power just about every type of engine. How? With the water fuel cell. It fits in the palm of his hand, but it could revolutionize the world.
But he sadly died after eating at a Cracker Barrel restaurant, supposedly with NATO officials, regarding his car. The group made an opening toast with cranberry juice, immediately after which he ran outside, followed by his brother, vomited violently, and told his brother, "They poisoned me."
So it's imperative that we developed a technology that we can move very quickly. And of course, water was the answer to it because water is a very free and abundant energy source.
There's a lot of weird stories that have come out about alternative transportation and the people who have tried to build that disappearing. It's a very weird once you see the pattern of it. Oh, and just by the way, you know how us 80s kids always say things like, I watched Back to the Future too. We were supposed to have flying cars.
Gotta come back with me. Where? Back to the future.
Well, guess what? We did have a flying car.
Have you ever been caught in a traffic jam and wished you had wings and could fly away from it all? Well, you're not the only one, but Moulton Taylor of Longview, Washington did something about it. He designed and built the Aero Car. At San Francisco's International Airport, Taylor shows how quickly you can convert car into plane. The conversion takes but a few minutes. No more trouble than changing a tire, and a lot more fun. The pusher prop in the tail raring to go, likewise the pilot at the controls. So let's put traffic woes behind us and try that wild blue yonder.
They just wouldn't build it. So that's cool. We had a flying car in 1949, a guy called Moult Taylor created, which was convertible between a car and a small plane. And it actually got certified as airworthy from the Civil Aeronautics Administration, which is the precursor to the FAA. And there was all kind of media buzz and lots of public interest, but Taylor just couldn't seem to find any auto manufacturers or aircraft manufacturers who were interested in it. And that thing still flies today. And you could say, well, it's too dangerous, but they could get pilot's licenses or something. We could have gone that route.
5 o'clock, USA.
They just didn't even try, is my point. They didn't even allow it to be a thing at all. So they've gone out of their way to keep the status quo what it is, what they make money off of, a kind of car that requires an insane amount of maintenance and runs on oil and gas.
This is a simple story that kind of tells itself in their faces. Smiling faces. Warm faces. Friendly faces. But on guard. And wondering. Questioning. It is also about a special kind of race.
Meanwhile, in a country where politicians and corporations have gone out of their way to keep the status quo in this regard and engineer the whole of America around personal automobile ownership, where the overwhelming majority of our cities lack even the most basic of mass transportation systems, the average American is now being priced out altogether of being able to own a car. Fast. This is happening very fast, you guys. As of the beginning of 2026, the average transaction price for a new car in America is now just under $50,000.
The ways, the means,
freedom of movement for all, symbol of democracy.
I mean, I've never bought a new car in my life because I've never been able to afford one, but there's no way in hell I could afford one now. $50,000? Has everybody lost their damn minds?
It's insane. The cost of both new and used vehicles remain near record highs. And as CBS's Maya Blackstone shows us, some are now asking if it's just too expensive to own a car.
The average cost of a new car in the U.S. is roughly $50,000.
I feel that for the younger generations and for the people coming up, it's very sad.
The average monthly payment for a car now is $748 a month. A month. And we used to have a lot more cheaper used cars available in this country, but if you'll recall, Obama ran a Cash for Clunkers program, which cost taxpayers $3 billion and basically just taking taxpayer money and giving it to people who traded in a car for a voucher for a few $1,000s to buy a new car. But the cars they traded in had to be functional. That was a requirement. They had to be still running to qualify for the program. So some 690,000 functional used vehicles worth probably a couple $1 billion were completely destroyed. The dealers who took them were required to permanently disable and intentionally destroy the engines and the drivetrains. So even some of the parts, like some of the parts could still be recycled, but the most valuable ones absolutely could not. So it also hurts other people who still own those cars and did not turn them back in because there's 690,000 cars being destroyed. You can't even use those parts because they've completely destroyed the engines. The program not only drastically cut the supply of decent pre-owned running used vehicles, but the average price for a used car immediately jumped up over 10% the following year. And in some cases, certain SUVs jumped up 30% in price. So the prices just keep going up. And for the average American right now, who's getting squeezed at all levels, car ownership is getting further and further out of sight, as it is even a possibility. And all of this might be okay if we did live in some place like Western Europe, which has a functioning integrated rail system. But as I said earlier, we don't have that here. We just simply don't. I feel like people who have never been here do not understand how behind we are with this. We really are. Decades and decades in the past by comparison to other places in the first world. You can't just get on a train here and go anywhere. That's not a thing. I'm going to show you. This is Amtrak. This is the only nationwide commuter train that is left in this country. And I want you to look at this. So this is the Amtrak website where I can track my train with Google Maps. Let's look at the map of the train. Here you go. The red line is where you can go on a train in this country. All those places where there's no red line, there's no train there. So you're not riding a train. And check out how nonsensical this is. It's the ghost of the shell of a former system, and you can really see it in a lot of places. Like, for example, if I was in Denver, Colorado, and I just wanted to go down here to Albuquerque, the next state over. So I want to go from Denver, Colorado to Albuquerque, New Mexico. These are two states that border each other and both have train lines. If I wanted to do that, let's type that into this system. Albuquerque, Albuquerque, Albuquerque. Sorry, Weird Al. Let's say next Saturday. I want to do that next Saturday. Let's find a train so we can do that. Here we go. It would take me 44 hours. If I get in a car and do that, it's going to take me 6 hours to get from Denver to Albuquerque. So I can get in a car and do it, and it'll take me 6 hours, or I can try to take a train and it'll take me 43 hours and 55 minutes, which is 2 segments. It says the first leg of your trip will be 15 hours and 39 minutes to Illinois, where you will have a 5.5 hour layover. The layover itself would be about the amount of time it would take you if you had a car just to go straight from one city to the other. But since you're taking a train, you get to go all the way over to Illinois. So let's go back to our map. Then you're going to have to get on a different train, and you're going to have to ride that all through all of these states, Missouri and Kansas, and back through Colorado again, but just another part of it. Then you'll go down to Albuquerque, and it will take you 44 hours to do that. By the way, according to this map, depending on exactly which route you decide to take and what time you decide to go, you might actually just get there faster if you rode a bike. That is the option you have if you want to go from Colorado to Albuquerque. And it gets more ridiculous in some of these other places. Like if you were in Oklahoma City, you couldn't just go to Kansas City, Missouri from here to here because there's just no train. In fact, if you're on a train and you go to Oklahoma City, your only option is to turn around and go right back down to Dallas or Fort Worth because you're not going anywhere else. There is the train line runs up to Oklahoma City, stops and turns around and comes back. It doesn't go anywhere. It connects to nothing. So you just go to Oklahoma City and go nowhere else. Unless you live there, why would anyone even take that train? I don't know. The train hits a dead end in Bakersfield out here in California too. If you live in Bakersfield and you want to go to Los Angeles, let's see how long it takes. Let's do Bakersfield to Los Angeles. So less than 2 hours drive, right? Now let's see what happens if I want to take the Amtrak train to do that. Okay, they won't even let people in Bakersfield buy a ticket on the train. They're saying you can only leave Bakersfield via bus. So you're not even allowed in Bakersfield to get a ticket and get on that train. It goes to Bakersfield somehow, but you can't get on it to leave Bakersfield. I guess maybe that's where all the trains are going. Maybe they are driving through a portal in the space-time continuum and they're just leaving physical known reality as we know it. Because they're not letting people buy train tickets in Bakersfield to leave Bakersfield. Sorry if you're from there, by the way. But it's a rough place. Okay, you probably know what I mean. Anyways, we just don't have a real system. And the train, as you can see, again, there's a lot of major cities this train doesn't hit. It doesn't hit Las Vegas. It doesn't hit anywhere in northern Texas at all. Large portions of Kentucky and Tennessee have nothing. Large portions of New York have nothing. Pennsylvania has something, but it's in the southern part only. And then all of this stuff up in the Northwest is just basically empty. There's one line that runs through the northern parts of North Dakota, Montana, and the very northern tip of Idaho, but the rest of that whole state and Wyoming and South Dakota, completely empty. There's nothing. You couldn't even get anywhere over there. And there's one line that runs up through Oregon and Washington, up past Sacramento, California. But this is what I mean. This whole train system, it's not like in the UK where you could pretty much go to any major city on their transportation systems and get anywhere. I have friends that live in the UK that they don't own a car at all. They don't have to. Their public transportation system is so good. They don't need one. They can live their whole entire life without purchasing a car. That is not what it is like here. And again, as I said earlier, if you don't have a car in some of these places, you will not have access to food or healthcare or anything. You will die. You will die. So when I say you have to own a car to live here, you really have to. And they just keep talking about how we're going to go to zero car ownership. The C40 cities mayors put out that report back in 2019, and they project a future where no one owns a car. But I'm saying we have towns here that are cities that have thousands of people living in them, and some of them don't even have sidewalks. My kid's school is on a 2-lane highway with no sidewalks. If he doesn't get the bus or I don't go pick him up, he's not walking home from school unless he lives right next to that school.
And have a pedestrian sign, see that? With no sidewalk right here.
But it's on a major highway. There's a lot of places are like that. You can't just walk. I saw a girl do a video where she was trying to explain to people about where the World Cup's going to be. Europeans were getting really angry when she said, this is New Jersey. You're talking about turnpikes and swamps. You're not walking anywhere around here. That is not a thing.
I don't know if you've seen all this stuff online about these Europeans that want to walk to the World Cup, but as a lifelong New Jersey resident that lives in Europe, I need to tell you that I'm the only one that's right about this. First, there's this condescending ass tweet going around where they're like, oh, it's not that far. We could just walk it. I took a screenshot of Google Maps. Do you know what this is? This is the Meadowlands. The Meadowlands is a swamp full of toxic waste and trash and mob bodies. These are some of the most major roads in the country. If you try to cross these on your feet, you will get killed. People are saying, oh, we'll just fill up the roads. You do not understand. These are New Jersey drivers. New Jersey drivers are insane. New Jersey drivers will kill you. And they're also all out here well, why isn't there a bridge? A bridge to where? This is literally, it's in the middle of nowhere in a swamp. And someone was like, oh, well, Berlin's in a swamp and Amsterdam's on a swamp. No, it's not on a swamp. It's not a city. It's a swamp. There's nothing there. There's nothing to walk to. There's nowhere to go. You go to the Meadowlands to watch the Giants lose. That's the only thing you do there. This is not like walking in Berlin or walking in London. You will die on the highway. Vinny from like West Caldwell is late for work and needs to get across the highway, and all the trains are shut down because they had to shut down all the trains for the soccer game that no one gives a shit about in my state. Don't walk.
And they're like, oh, sure, we can do it. Like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. If you haven't been here and seen it for yourself, you're not walking on the New Jersey Turnpike. That's not a thing. You will get killed. That is dangerous.
I got so many comments like this in my last video of people accusing me of being like condescending or trying to own the Euros, when I'm just trying to tell you that you cannot walk on the highway because you will get killed. I guarantee you that everyone from the state of New Jersey agrees that MetLife is a shithole, that the World Cup shouldn't be there, and that the whole country should be more walkable, but it's not changing in the next 2 months. My point is to the people that think that they can walk everywhere because they're built different, that you're not built different, that Europe is built differently. You can walk anywhere here. I live in Germany. You can walk anywhere. It's not like that in New Jersey. You will get hit by a car.
And people got mad and thought she had an attitude problem. It's like, no, that girl's just from Jersey and she's just trying to explain to you how it is.
And also, this is just how everyone in the state of New Jersey talks. We just are loud and we talk with our hands, and this is just the natural tone of voice of the entire state. And if you hate that, then you're really going to hate coming to New Jersey for the World Cup, because it's literally just this. But I'm nice. Like, this is nice. This is how nice people talk. Most people are meaner. Yes, New Jersey is a corrupt, expensive nightmare hellhole, but it is my expensive, corrupt nightmare hellhole. So yes, I'm sorry they put your soccer match here, but it's here. Don't walk here.
I don't even know why they're having it here. I really don't, because we don't have the kinds of interconnected transportation, and it's been made this way on purpose. We've been held in this technology bubble for this on purpose. But now they want to upgrade everything to this new future, and they haven't even upgraded a damn thing here. Our stuff is all still in the past. And it's like this anytime you talk about upgrading any major tech in this country, anything having to do with infrastructure, anything having to do with resources. We are a nation of aging infrastructure that is crumbling all around us right now, every aspect of it. And now we're being told we have to go from the mode of transportation that they've built the entire country around depending upon to another type of that same type, an electric car that's also intensely resource dependent. It just feels like another illusionary false choice between two options when there were other options that were systematically suppressed for the whole of the 20th century. Or if you want to get really conspiratorial about it, former Google CEO Eric Schmidt said that if the computer had been invented first, they wouldn't have allowed private car ownership.
Your car should drive itself. It's amazing to me that we let humans drive cars. Computers should drive cars. It's obvious, right? If you think about it, it's a bug that cars were invented before computers, right, in that sense. And all of a sudden, it'll be much, much safer when we let the computers do the things that they're good at, and the humans can talk or eat or whatever they want to do in the car. You get the idea.
Or the fact that now that they've done cash for clunkers and they're forcing everybody to buy new cars, they're going to mandate kill switches in those cars, even though they really haven't worked out how exactly that's going to work, considering that technology produces a lot of false positives.
My question is, how do you appeal your sentence once your car, the technology in your car, has judged you to be incapable of driving? Once it's disabled you and your children at the side of the road, how do you appeal that? Do you press a button on the dashboard? Do you start talking to an AI? What if it really was somebody who was drunk? Are you really going to send a police car after this? Disabled vehicle? Do we have the resources to do that? There's going to be so many false positives. The technology is unworkable. That's why the DOT is still in the rulemaking process, asking for feedback on how this thing could even exist. And it's just a bad idea, but it's in law. And so our amendment would defund that. And with that, I'd like to reserve the balance of my time.
Not to mention, these devices can also get hacked, as we saw last month when in Toxalock, an automotive breathalyzer maker that gets used daily by 150,000 drivers across the country, got hacked and their systems went down. And so did everyone else's cars. due to the device's inability to connect to the company's services. It's pretty interesting because the patents you do get to see, the new patents we do get to see coming out are things like, Ford spying on you in your car and using your own conversations against you to sell you things in your own vehicle.
Now, Ford didn't file just one patent. They filed a stack of them, all within months of each other. Get this. This Ford technology patent doesn't just watch you. This one puts you in jail. Ford filed a patent, serial number 0104469, where the system takes your biometric data, your face, your iris, and your fingerprint, and it runs it through a criminal database in real time. Ford's own patent language describes this as potentially useful for police. They wrote that. Ford wrote that into the patent application. So the question isn't whether this technology can be abused. Ford already told you who it's for. You just didn't know that you were buying a cop car.
They're all based on surveillance.
Constant surveillance of you in your vehicle and AI determining whether or not to shut off your car. This was signed into law and 57 Republicans voted for it.
Eroding our privacy to spy on us and put us in some kind of economic control system that's even worse than the one we're already in.
Prepare to sacrifice liberty under the guise of fake safety,
if not downright just taking away our freedom altogether. See how that works? So they finally give everyone a technology that's been around since the Victorian era, but only once it can be fully remotely controlled in various ways. And that's not even getting into the more annoying aspects of all of that, which isn't just, having to do with personal sovereignty and the right to travel as a free human being, as a sovereign individual on the earth. But they're using those softwares to, shut down parts that already exist in the car and then charge you more for them piecemeal. The same way they're, taking apart buckets from lids and then charging you separately for the bucket and the lid, as if there's anyone anywhere who's just going to buy a lid if they don't have a bucket. It's so annoying what they've done to our society. They've literally nickeled and dimed the shit out of it in a way that just makes you want to go back to, Flintstones technology, man. Just screw it. I'm walking. Except I can't walk here because, they built everything around the car.
History is filled with references to oil, the fossil fuel we most rely on today.
Yeah, gas prices are awful. We're being gouged by the gas companies. We get zero oil from Iran, and we're actually exporting it. We give the oil companies billions of dollars in subsidies, and it's not right. They're ripping us off.
Why? This is crazy. I hate it here. I'm not leaving the house anymore.
Gas is getting too high, so I gotta do what I can. I can't do my regular cars. I gotta do my little mini cars. So if I can get $1 on pump 6, pull up, take some of that $4 gas.
America is the queen of giving us two options that both suck and acting like that's the only choices we have. There's no other anything anywhere. We can never evolve. We can never progress. It's always within this very narrow window, usually of looped things we've already had before. And that's all. There's never any progress outside of that.
It's Dieter and Andy. Join us next time on Debunk when we take on free energy machines.
Yeah. What is all this stupid crap you're trying to build anyway? If it doesn't have one of these, it's not going to work.
See this engine? It can't run on water.
Yeah.
Join us Wednesday on Debunk.
Yeah.
And it's the same with every aspect of our society. The healthcare system is either filling your body full of lab-made pharmaceutical chemicals or having your organs ripped out of you or being radiated. Those are the only options. There's no other options. Where are they? They disappear. If someone comes up with one, they're labeled a quack, they're attacked, they're chased out of the country sometimes. And in the case of Royal Raymond Rife, whose lab was burned, it disappears. You will never see it again. We were made to heal. We all know how well the big pharma medical model of filling ourselves up with chemicals and ripping out all our vital organs has served us. These aren't cures. It's sick care, not health care. It's only a matter of time before the medical and scientific communities are going to be forced to admit that Rife was right, or they'll risk losing the last few shreds of credibility they even have, if they have any, in a world where it's become all too obvious we've been purposefully held hostage in a technology bubble. And even now, when somebody comes forward with an alternative, they get threatened and then they disappear.
All right, listen, everybody. I can't go into too much detail, but there is some very, very odd stuff going on. I'm certainly under attack right now in many different ways, and I just want everybody to know to just kind of have your eyes open. And I have my eyes open, but there's a lot going on. So I'm still working. I'm still building. Nothing's going to stop that. But I'm just telling you guys right now, be on the lookout because I'm under attack.
And you don't hear from him again, like Julian Brown, who created a tech that turns plastic garbage that can't be recycled anyway, because if you don't know, a lot of recycling is a scam. He turns that stuff into gasoline. And last July, people were talking about how they hadn't seen him in a couple weeks, and they thought something had happened to him. And then his mom came out and clarified to reporters, he's just keeping a low profile because he's being threatened.
So I've created my own gas station that makes fuel from plastic waste. Let's go. So we start to see some golden droplets coming over. And how do we know what type of liquid this is? Is it gasoline, diesel, jet fuel? Well, it's all based on temperature. You can see the condensate temperature at this elbow here is just under 100 C, about 90 C there, which translates to about 190 Fahrenheit. And that lines up with the temperature boiling point range of gasoline. This here is plastiline. Gasoline I made from plastic waste. We are going to put it inside of this. It's indeed in there. Yes, indeed. There we go. That's weed whacking I've seen done in 30 years. Folks, I have just mowed the lawn with plastic waste. You guys understand what this equation is? Plastic plus microwaves equals fuel.
And I just thought it was interesting that when this was posted up on X Twitter, there was a community note that got added to it to let people know that he didn't invent this technology. It's actually been around since the mid-20th century. And so, you know, your brain will probably naturally ask the question of, hey, why aren't we using this? Why isn't this a widespread thing that is in use today? Why isn't this a thing? Since we're told all the time how we're dying in a sea of plastics, how the environment, the animals, the people, everything that's trying to live and exist in our environment is being slow killed by plastic. Why can't we figure out a way to use this right here to solve two problems in one handy dandy thermochemical recycling process that heats plastic waste into and breaks it down and turns it into a gas that can be used to power things? Why aren't we doing that? Why isn't that widespread in use right now? I mean, we're told that there's a Great Pacific Garbage Patch. That's actually what they call it. That is supposedly just this floating death mass of trillions of pieces of plastic trash, twice the size of Texas and growing exponentially out in the ocean. Why aren't we doing something with that that's actually not only cleaning up the environment, but then using that as a fuel, since that's something we've had since the freaking 1970s, if you're counting plastics.
We must develop new sources. We must demand more efficient engines for our cars. We must push forward, at whatever cost, the development of new energy resources. The energy is here, within this universe, on this planet. It's a challenge facing each of us in all lands, to explore, to find, to develop, and to use wisely, not wastefully, the energy that's here. If we meet this challenge, it will be for the good of all mankind on Earth.
If you start asking questions about that, I'm sure you'll probably come back to the same answers we always get. And they're always excuses, and they're never good enough. The same goes with our transportation system. It has to be very materials dependent and resource based of things that are limited quantities that require tearing them out of the earth or sucking them out of the earth in one way or another. It definitely has to be that way, and it's definitely something that artificial scarcity can be placed on. There's not any other option. We're not allowed to even think outside of that paradigm at all. You're just not allowed to. That you're in this very narrow window of possibility, and everything else outside of that doesn't exist.
The pump does not know when midnight comes. Days are the same to it. It pumps from Tuesday into Wednesday without a halt. Each day, every day, it brings us another 24 hours of progress. Building our nation, guarding its security, assuring the future of America.
And when something else does pop up that was suppressed from before, because that's not the only possibilities, well, those people end up getting threatened and then they disappear and you don't hear from them again. And then whatever they rediscovered gets resuppressed. And we just do that over and over and over again.
Lady. Flowers. And
this is silly.
There it is! There it is! There's the dented beetle! Yes! Don't you want to know how I did that? I'll tell you. They're on a loop. They go around the block. They come back. They go around again. They just go round and round. Round and round.
Because we're just held in this little false paradigm all the time. People have these debates about this, but it's pretty clear that there are vested interests in controlling everyone and keeping them in an artificial scarcity system that has a very low level of thinking on what is actually possible in this reality. For control, I don't even think it's greed. I think greed is not good enough to explain it. It's for control. And it's like this every time you ask anyone here about any kind of major tech upgrades that would even bring us up to modern standards that have been basic in other countries for decades. We are a nation of aging infrastructure that is crumbling all around us everywhere. And if you ask someone what seems like a common sense question, things like, hey, I noticed that the Middle East relies on thousands of desalination plants to get reverse osmosis fresh water. Why can't California, which is completely, utterly bordered on the Pacific Ocean, for the entirety of the whole entire state, maybe try that instead of relying so hard on the Colorado River, which we're now being told is shrinking due to drought and is at a crisis level of overallocation that is now so low it may reach Deadpool levels by next year.
Tonight, the Colorado River is on the brink of disaster. Its water is shared by 7 states.
The snowpack in the Rockies that feeds the river fell to record lows this winter, pushing major reservoirs downstream like Lake Mead and Lake Powell toward critically low levels.
Which would mean water can no longer flow out of the dam and also makes hydroelectric power generation impossible. A question like that. If you ask a question like that, you will be given all kinds of excuses all day long as the day is long for why it's totally fine and practical and makes complete sense for the Middle East to rely upon thousands of desalination plants for reverse osmosis freshwater, but we can't have that here. I mean, you'll get everything from protecting fish larvae to not putting salt back into the ocean, to the cost just being way too prohibitive. Again, this is the same state that is now spending an asinine amount of billions of dollars on a high-speed rail system that may never even be completed, and which no one will be able to afford a ticket because it's going to be so expensive. And oh, by the way, that state needs water so badly that people can only water their lawns on, alternating bank holidays or something, and all of their utilities are skyrocketing or whatever. But they're also in the process of building 54 new AI data centers there, which absolutely will require a lot of water and fresh water to keep those things cool and keep them functional. So the state has water, apparently, when it's something like AI data centers, just not for the actual human beings who need water to exist there, I guess. And when you really think about it, it becomes like the kind of excuses that someone in an abusive relationship makes for their abuser. But those excuses don't really make any sense and explain why everything around us in this country is falling apart and we're being held in the past here by comparison to other first world nations when it comes to our infrastructure.
The common, everyday spectacle of modern traffic on roads that are as out of date as the covered wagon.
Look at this road.
He does have to get word.
Whatever.
It could be like miles or something.
That dude is checking X. We're going to be sitting here for the rest of our fucking lives.
This is the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Well, it was anyway, until we're told a container ship had a catastrophic power failure and just plowed right into it and collapsed the bridge 2 years ago. And here it is, it's been 2 years, and they're still in the pre-construction phase. And this bridge is not projected to be rebuilt again until October 2028, and it's expected to cost over $2 billion because they're redesigning it. And that's if it doesn't get pushed back, or that estimate doesn't go up, which it probably will for whatever reason. I'm sure they'll come up with something. On the flip side, you can find time lapses of China building bridges in less than 2 days. And I get it's a different kind of bridge, and maybe we don't want to be that efficient. That seems kind of crazy, maybe unsafe, I don't know. But contrast that to years and years and years, and still no bridge, and money disappearing, and costs going up, and what the hell is even happening anymore? So now what you have is we're slapping down tech like delivery robots on sidewalks that are so crumbling and falling apart that the robots themselves cannot navigate them. So we didn't upgrade our infrastructure at all. We're just going to slap a bunch of robots down on top of it, I guess. It's so bad. And that's when you have a sidewalk, because like I said, there's a lot of places that don't have them at all. Explain it? You can't. It doesn't make sense here. Elon Musk is talking about building Hyperloop. Well, so that's very similar type of technology to the pneumatic tube idea that was Mr. Beach, the Scientific American, 1870. That's where we're at. It's really like nothing ever changes and everything just gets worse all the time, and it has been for decades and decades and decades, while technologies that would be cleaner, more efficient, and just all around better for the people using it and the environment that it's being used in just disappear all the time. They just disappear continuously. We're just now getting to the part where they're like, oh, what about this technology that just keeps getting rediscovered and buried and rediscovered and buried, and we just never end up with it, though. It just keeps disappearing, and the status quo, it's just being militantly enforced upon us. This government has now spent over $60 billion on this war just since February 28th, and that amount goes up $1 billion a day.
Imagine in Iran that instead of spending their wealth, billions of dollars supporting terrorists or weapons, had spent that money helping the people of Iran, you'd have a much different country.
which is the kind of money that could really fix some of these problems that I just talked about and be put into actual improvements that would actually positively impact the lives of the Americans who live here. We're never going to see that under this current system, and they've made that extremely abundantly clear.
You are lost.
They got the money for things like a war or a gold ballroom or like a giant triumphal arch in DC that no one wants that looks totally tacky as hell.
Memorial Circle is open for a reason. This is a site that stands between the Arlington House, which is Robert E. Lee's former home,
right,
and the Lincoln Memorial, which is, of course, the memorial, the monument to Abraham Lincoln. So it's a symbolic bridge. It represents the reunion of the country after the Civil War. And, you know, the detractors of the arch say that it would just stand between that symbolic unity.
You're supposed to be able to see from one down to the other.
You're supposed to be able to see from one down to the other.
Like, fine, but we don't have the money for bringing our country into the 21st century. This is a joke, okay? Because there's just trillions of dollars that has disappeared somewhere here into a black hole.
But governments can't die. So we need to find other incentives for bureaucracy to adapt and improve. The technology revolution has transformed organizations across the private sector, but not ours, not fully, not yet. Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And when you start talking about that, you really get attacked for it. But come on, guys, like it is not, there's only so many vacation houses and yachts that someone can buy. We're not really seeing that. So this is trillions of dollars going somewhere. But it absolutely is not going to the aging infrastructure and resource systems of this country, which are falling apart. And some of them have not been updated since the 30s and 40s. They're like 100 years old, cobbled together with like duct tape. That's basically what's up. And they're all dangerous as hell. And reports come out every year about how dangerous everything is. You know, it's a surprise that the whole country hasn't just burst into flames by now because it's so old. And I'm so sick of it. And I know a lot of people are so sick of it because it's just like they expect you to just keep working and paying your taxes while all this money gets sucked into a black hole. We don't know where that money's going, but it's definitely not going to even bringing the United States up to a 21st century standard. We are still living here in the 20th century for sure. Absolutely. While technologies that could actually make our lives better just keep vanishing every time they get rediscovered. So there's trillions of dollars going somewhere. We just don't know where that is. We can't find it anywhere on the surface of the country. According to the Federation of American Scientists, there were 6,543 patent secrecy orders in effect as of the end of fiscal year 2025. And that number has been rising year over year for a while now. The Invention Secrecy Act of 1951 reads, and I quote, "Whenever publication or disclosure by the grant of a patent on an invention in which the government has a property interest might, in the opinion of the head of the interested government agency, be detrimental to the national security, the commissioner, upon being so notified, shall order that the invention be kept secret and shall withhold the grant of a patent," end quote.
American ingenuity will not rest.
The patent secrecy is a completely opaque process, but violating it, if you make something and they tell you your patent is under secrecy, you violate that, it could mean up to $10,000 fine and 2 years imprisonment. But we know in the past, due to FOIA requests, that some of the things that were being held back were things like, let's go with extremely efficient solar panels in the 1970s.
Success has been limited so far in attempts to capture and use the sun's energy directly.
You know, the 1970s when the energy crisis was going on.
Gasoline shortages are spreading across the country. Gasoline lines and closed gas stations are becoming increasingly common.
And rationing was going on, and the petrodollar was being implemented.
We must change if we're going to have the energy we need. If we want new oil, we've got to look in new places.
mean, just think about what I said for 2 seconds together and try to make it make sense. You can't without admitting that we're getting screwed here. I mean, here's a note in the Federal Register from 2012 where they are asking for comments from people on questions on economic security-based secrecy orders. Number 1, should the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office institute a plan to identify patent applications relating to critical technologies or technologies important to the U.S. economy to be placed under secrecy?
David Rockefeller writes that the Trilateral Commission's second executive committee meeting was in Brussels in June 1974, just after the first OPEC oil shock, and calls for a, quote, new international economic order. He says we concentrated on the energy crisis and relations with developing countries.
So what does it mean? What does national security mean?
Solar heat is practical. It works. But it must be supplemented by traditional energy sources. No real breakthrough has been made in converting solar energy into electric power.
It means status quo, baby. That's what that means. We say that's national security. It doesn't matter if you make something that's going to make the world better. No one will ever see it unless they allow it to be seen. Otherwise, they will put you in jail.
Inventors, are you working on an idea that could shift the tired old paradigm, revolutionize energy, unshackle humanity from resource dependence, and change the world? Is your idea so good it can free humanity? Call the National Ministry of Patent Office Security today. We're interested in your idea.
Pretty much every technology that we're hearing about right now, almost every new technology, in fact, I would say the majority of new technologies that we are hearing about right now are going to make our lives worse, not better.
This is Maven Smart System, Palantir's software as a service product that we are deploying across the entire department.
And when I say that every new piece of tech that we do see patents for, that we do seem to hear about, seems overwhelmingly like it's being patented to create a dystopian hellscape around us.
Never offline. The Apple Watch is just the start. How wearable tech will change your life, like it or not. The paradox of a wearable device is that it gives you control and takes it away at the same time.
What I mean by that is things like, this patent awarded to Wells Fargo in 2022 for a smart dust that can authenticate user payments by collecting sensor data, including audio data, optical data, temperature data, pressure data, motion data, and then compare that data to your user profile, whatever the hell's in there, to make sure you're the person making the payments. So when I say we're being held in a technology bubble, I mean that in literally every possible way I can, pretty much. And that goes for everything, including health. We have not been told the truth, and we're still not being told the truth. And the country is still crumbling all around us, and the New York subway is still running on technology that has to be fixed in-house that's from pre-1930s. Japan over there is about to have a high-speed train that goes 300 plus miles an hour on maglev technology. And California can't even get one leg of its high-speed rail built without so much corruption. Billions of dollars are just basically being lit on fire and danced around. This whole situation in our country must change. It has to. We cannot go on this way. And they can't just make it to where no one can afford a car in a country that doesn't have mass transportation because it's been purposefully withheld from us. That is not going to be okay. Something is going to have to give because we're not ever going to move forward. There's not going to be any progress happening here as a people under this artificial scarcity-driven fake technology bubble that we are being purposefully kept in. Like a prison. It's holding humanity back. It's holding our country back. It is holding us as individuals back. And it's becoming more obvious all the time.
If planned obsolescence is something they do admittedly, but quietly, how much more are they not even telling us about in the true suppressed technology?
All all who cooperate in the building of America and its grandeur are united in a heroic tribute to the millions of engineers who have conceived and designed and helped develop our way of life.
The fact remains that conservation alone will not give us the energy needed to permit our country to prosper at its present level.
And you have to ask yourself, 6,543 secret patents.
As fracking made natural gas cheaper to extract, investment in alternative energy slowed. Today, renewables account for around 10% of total energy production in the U.S., half the level Carter had hoped to reach by 2000. At the same time, other countries like India and China have become the epicenter of renewable technology and production, just as the worldwide need for multiple sources of energy has skyrocketed.
I'm afraid that what we're going to be doing is creating an America that has to buy the technology that it needs from others, despite the fact that we were the pioneers.
Remember, I tried to look up atmospheric generator. They were going the next week to go get that patent in the 20s, and you never heard about it ever again. Not a peep. There's nothing about it in the patents, nothing that I could find anyway. And you have to ask yourself if the key to revolutionizing our reality, the key to our freedom from artificial scarcity and oil-driven wars and greed-based control, isn't hidden somewhere amongst those 6,500 secret patents, which have been kept from the public under the lock and key of so-called national security, which you also have to wonder isn't just a euphemism for keeping us locked down in the status quo of control. I wonder how any of the scientists who are all mysteriously disappearing right now might answer that question, if they were still here.
You know, up to now, I kept thinking that everything science did was good. My training, I suppose. Now I'm not so sure. Other fellas are thinking too.
But necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And this society and the tech bubble it's been held in with its engineered artificial scarcity increasingly does not meet the necessity, the needs of the people that are here. In some ways, there's good news here, though, because this pattern of this tech surfacing and then disappearing and then resurfacing again, only to mysteriously disappear again and then come back again over and over and over throughout the entirety of the 21st century, going all the way back to the Victorian era at least, can't hold forever. Too many people are figuring this out now. I think it's pretty clear. Because the truth has a sticky way of never getting buried for good.
The story of how oil is brought up from far down in the earth is exciting.
I would just bomb those suckers. And that's right. I'd blow up the pipes. I'd blow up the I'd blow up every single inch. There would be nothing left. And you know what? You'll get Exxon to come in there in 2 months. You ever see these guys, how good they are, the great oil companies? They'll rebuild that sucker brand new. It'll be beautiful. And I'd ring it, and I'd take the oil. And I said, I'll take the oil.
Gasoline is the one thing most of us need to get around.
The price of gas has skyrocketed.
The dispute with Iran could disrupt oil supplies. 7 million barrels of oil leaked into the Gulf.
American military hegemony covering 90% of the globe's energy resources.
The oil and gas in the Caspian Basin is worth somewhere between 11 and 12 trillion dollars.
EPA is unsafe and can lead to cancer, diabetes, and other diseases.
It was men like these who said, "We'll drill deeper."
My fellow citizens, events in Iraq have now reached the final days of decision.
I ordered our forces to launch a cruise missile attack.
This was the starting point of a new American business venture abroad.
Degrade and ultimately destroy the terrorist group known as ISIL. We must declare war on war, so the outcome will be peace upon peace.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
And then we control it all. We control the Caspian Basin oil. We have the pipeline to get it to the sea.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th.
Electric power is everywhere present in unlimited quantities and can drive the world's machinery without the need of coal, oil, gas, or any other fuel.
They made your world based on that. Your world based on that. Your world.